Okay.
All right, we're ready. Well, hi, Larry. It's so good to see you. Oh my goodness, it's been a
Good to
while
see
since
you.
I've seen you. And I'm going to repeat something that I shared before we started recording because I think it's worth saying again. I'm just so happy to see you looking so well. It's been a while since I've seen you, and you just look so well and so healthy. And that just really, really makes me happy. So, really good to
Wow.
see you and good to
Yeah.
see you doing well. So,
Yeah. And you deserve a lot of credit for it. So,
oh, well, thank you. And
yeah.
you know me well enough. I won't take the credit. You did the hard work, not me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for agreeing to be here with me today. One of the things I shared with you in an email, I think, is that one of the things I'm trying to do is just record some videos with people that I've worked with in the past and share a little bit of their journey to offer some inspiration to others, some helpful ideas and tips and all that good stuff. So I'm just really glad that you agreed to do it with me.
Yeah. Happy to. Yeah.
So, could you share a little bit about what life looked like for you, before Perfect Storm, before you found DNRS, and then, what life looks like now, kind of that, how life gets divided into those phases after we
Yeah.
have
It really
chronic
is.
illness.
It really is like a before and after. But before my quote unquote perfect storm, life was good. I was athletic and doing great work. I write research papers, very technical stuff. Doing that and enjoying life and being very active. And yeah, it was really one of the best years of my life. And then things changed quickly. So yeah,
Okay.
the and I think I went through what most people go through that are afflicted like this is that you don't know what's going on at first. You go to so-called experts who don't know what's going on. You try a lot of different things. None of them work. And fortunately, I stumbled across the DNRS. I forget how that came about, but I was fortunate and um, got the DVDs and did the program and saw that, yeah, this is something that's going to work. And um, uh, but during that time, before I found DNRS, yeah, it was things had shifted dramatically, and I couldn't exercise anymore. I couldn't read. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't drive. I couldn't nap. I couldn't meditate. I couldn't do much of anything. And social interaction was particularly difficult suddenly because I've always been a very social person. And suddenly I just couldn't tolerate it and I couldn't be around people. Um, so that was going on for quite some time before I found the DNRS and started it up. Um, and I don't know if I was ever early on fully committed to it. I was doing the program and um, still thinking there might be an easier way to do this,
If only.
if only. So ended up trying some more things that I thought might work. Some of them were mildly helpful, but generally they weren't. And it was just a few years ago that I decided that I'm just going to commit to this and yeah, seriously, with all my heart to do this because I need to get out of where I was at. It just was pretty bleak. So um, uh, I just made that commitment, and it really is a 24/7 sort of thing. It's not something that you can do part-time, really, if you think about it. It's not something that you can dabble in. You need to commit your life. And, for perhaps once you get desperate enough and want to actually get out of there, that space, yeah, you get serious about it, which I did. And I'm glad I did. And part of that was doing the program conscientiously every day, working with you as a coach, which was essential to the whole process. And then participating in your groups, that was fun, and it was so reassuring. Great people in the groups, experiencing the same thing, which just normalized the whole experience, which is so important. Yeah. And yeah, so that's the past, but that's what I was doing. And now I'm back to exercising, I'm back to driving, I'm back to doing my life, back to socializing with people, and doing all the things that I was doing before. So it's been a dramatic recovery. And yeah, happy to share about the details about it and how it works.
Well, first of all, congrats. Like I said, it just makes me so happy to see you doing well and to also hear that you're doing things that I know a few years ago seemed impossible, like driving, like
Yeah,
exercising. Yeah.
yeah,
And you spoke so well to, I think, the experience that so many of us have of it's so confusing. Life can change so dramatically. And like you said, you went from doing highly technical work to you can't even read. And
couldn't even
it's
read.
just
Yeah,
right. It's just so
absolutely.
confusing.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's one of the things that can also be, like you said, so helpful about doing groups is it's so normalizing because you
Mhm.
hear other people going through the same thing and you go, oh, okay, everyone else is having the same exact experience of being so confused with what's happening and having life just turned upside down.
Yeah, yeah. And that you're not some sort of freak, that it's
Right.
not just about you, that it's a real thing. And
Mhm.
the experience is very similar, even though tipping points are different. The manifestations of the symptoms are different for everyone. There's just a consistent theme in the whole thing is that your life basically falls apart, and you're just trying to get back to it. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's a really good way to summarize it. Sad but true, but that's what happens. So I think for all of us is life just falls apart. Yeah.
yeah.
And like you said, I think sometimes that's what it takes to then be able to commit to it because like you said, you can't kind of half do it.
Oh,
I kind of joke it's like kind of being half pregnant. You either are or you aren't.
yeah. You're in or you're not. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Well, so a couple questions that I wanted to ask.
Sure.
I know that one of the things that you struggled with was sleep and sleep issues. And that's such a common symptom for so many people with limbic system impairment and nervous system dysregulation. So I'd love to hear just your thoughts on what helped you with that, how you worked through that, anything that you could share with that process, I think would be so helpful for so many.
Yeah. Um, how do I say that? Uh, it is a challenge, and it's one of the first things that goes is because your brain is doesn't want to go to sleep. It thinks it's under attack, and it's best thing it can do is stay up. And
Mhm.
so I think one of the biggest things with working with a program is having the faith that eventually it will change because you're convinced after maybe a year or two of this insomnia that it's just always going to be there. And there aren't immediate results like in a few days or weeks with the program. So you just, it's just a question of having faith. If you just keep doing this, the brain will settle down eventually. And uh, yeah. And frankly, doctors don't understand this. People that are experts in insomnia and sleep centers and things like that, all of which I've been to, don't understand it. And they also understand that traditional treatments don't work with this. Cognitive behavioral therapy, you talk to the experts at Stanford, they'll tell you this, it doesn't help with this.
Mhm.
Uh, and uh, drugs, of course, are a lousy way of approaching it, but it's a natural thing to want to take something at some point.
Sure.
But you find out very quickly that it just makes it worse. For me, it was just finally realizing that the lack of sleep is a symptom that it is just part of the limbic system acting up, and um, that eventually you're going to have some control over that. But in the interim, you don't, and you need to be patient with it. And then you discover that slowly over time, it's improving, and it continues to improve while doing the program. So don't have anything magic to say about it, except that there are some good things that you can do. And Annie Hopper's got a great meditation that helped me a lot. Listening to that, I subsequently found other sleep meditations that helped quite a bit too. And what else? Yeah, of course, doing all the sleep hygiene stuff that you need to be doing. But and then at some point you realize that, when you're awake at night, that's your opportunity to retrain your brain. And you take it on as, oh, this is good news. Here's an opportunity to do the training. And so I started doing that as well. Not easy to do, but it ultimately helps with all that. So I think those are the major points,
Okay.
of
Yeah.
the insomnia thing.
Yeah. I mean, definitely not easy to see it as an opportunity in the middle of the night and go, oh, good, this is an opportunity to retrain because it's the middle of the night.
Right, right.
But I really appreciate you stepping into that approach and starting to go, okay, I'm up. I might as well take advantage of this and teach my brain a different pattern. One of the things you also mentioned was trust. Trust that, the program would work, which I think it's easier for me to talk about trust being on the other side of this. It's easier for you to talk about trust being on the other side of this. What helped you find that trust when you were in the thick of it? Because I know just for me, when I was in the thick of it, trust was hard to find. It was a rare, rare thing for me a lot of times. Anything that helped you with that?
I think it's hearing other people's stories through
Mm,
DNRS, testimonials, working in your group workshops, working with you, that it is going to work. It is going to work. Just stay in it, and keep working at it. And I don't know, at some point you just have that faith, because yeah, yeah, you just decide that yeah, this is going to work for me. So you have that faith.
yeah.
Uh,
No, that makes total sense. And I think, like you said, hearing other people's stories or, talking to a coach one-on-one and getting that reassurance, or even just hearing in group. And if one person shares something, then often you can kind of latch onto that and hold on to that for a few days or a week to kind of get back into hope and trust that this will shift and it will change. So yeah, thank you. I think that's a
yeah,
really just lots of different ways to help to foster that trust, because again, we both know when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to trust that it's going to work for you, because we all think I'm going to be the one person that this doesn't work for.
right. And you're the one person that nothing else has helped with. So
Right, right.
uh but yeah, you just have to hang in there, because there aren't a lot of choice. I mean, there's not a lot of choice in it. You either do this or you stay the way you are, and I just wasn't going to accept that. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that stubbornness. That's what got me through quite a bit too, is just pure
Yeah,
stubbornness of I refuse to live like this. I will keep
yeah,
going. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
So let me ask you about the social anxiety, because I know, like you shared a few moments ago, you're very social. And I know just from knowing you that you are very social as well as your wife. So must have been pretty confusing to all of a sudden go, I'm not comfortable being the way I've always been in the world and with other people. So, what helped you work through that? What was that experience like? Because again, that can just be so confusing when all of a sudden that just changes.
Yeah, it is. It is. And at the worst time, when you could really use that interaction, when you could really seek out friends and new acquaintances and things like that to support you and help you in that. and you can't do it. You be in a conversation for 10 minutes and just be overwhelmed with symptoms. And again, having the faith that that will change eventually. And yeah, it's one of those peculiar manifestations. It's a peculiar symptom that your ability to engage with other people goes away, and I think your brain is just saying, you don't have time for this. We're under threat, and you don't have time. You don't have time to socialize. Uh, and yeah, so yeah, and that was, a sad part of the whole thing
Yeah.
is just losing touch with people, not having interactions. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find ways to challenge that in small ways, or small ways to start to step towards, this is uncomfortable, but I know this is what I want, so I'm going to try
Yeah,
and
and
move towards this?
yeah, and I think in the program you just take it on as a challenge, that exercise is a challenge. You exercise a little bit, and then you do the program. You're triggered by that. You do the program. And this is just another example of that. So it became part of the list of things to measure progress by, how comfortable am I being around other people? Just like how do I feel if I try to exercise or concentrate on reading something or watching even a TV program. So you do it incrementally, just like all the other processes in the program. You do a little bit, and then you rewire, and then you keep trying. And yeah, and gradually build back up to that ability to be with people and it'd be okay, that you're not panicking, you're not experiencing that kind of anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know I've shared this with you before, but it's probably helpful for me to share with other people as well, is that one of the things that I was always just so impressed with you was when you first started taking classes, you were still in the height of social anxiety, and you came every single week,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I could tell it was not comfortable at first, and
It
I
was
could
hard to
tell,
make it was hard to make it through an hour, but
yeah.
and it's no reflection on the class. It's just this dysregulation that you just can't focus that
Mhm.
long. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was always just so impressed with, you chose to show up every single week, even though it
Yeah.
wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And over time, I could, I just watched that change, and I could see you starting to get more comfortable, and then actually starting to volunteer to speak instead of really trying to avoid it.
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, it was fun for me to watch you just change and grow and evolve, and just to see that happen week after week after week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just want to share that, because I know that was something that I noticed on my end of just watching how that changed for you over
Yeah,
time.
and it was critical. And it was kind of a low risk situation of interacting with others, and everybody's experienced the same sort of things. So it's a very supportive group.
Yep.
And it's part of the commitment. In fact, when I started doing I was involved in another class at the same time. So I was doing it twice a week, just
Oh,
out of my commitment. But with your classes, I think we were together for almost a year. I
mhm.
think, were they 12-week
Yep.
pro periods of time, and I just was committed, and we just did it back to back to back. And each time I did it, was feeling better and better until
Yeah,
there's a day where you don't need to do that anymore.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Where you graduate. Well, I didn't know you're doing two classes at once. My goodness. I'm
Yeah, I
even
did that
more impressed.
initially. Yeah, that's all part. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it, and because there's too much at stake.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you jumping in with both feet and being willing to do things that are hard and uncomfortable, knowing that there's freedom on the other side of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you're a great example of that, your experience, and you have trust and faith in the people that are doing the DNRS and who have created it. And yeah, Yeah, you know it's possible, even though it
Yeah,
doesn't seem like it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
right.
for sure. Well, I know one of the other things that you've shared before is that you tried to come to DNRS more than once and had a couple false starts. What do you
Yeah,
think was the difference this last go round that really allowed you to commit? And, I mean, because clearly you jumped in fully committed, taking two classes at once when that's a very uncomfortable thing at the time. You really jumped in and fully committed that last go round. What was the difference? Do you have a sense of that?
yeah, I think there was almost maybe a year after started our I started the program, and then I sort of fell away from it. And then there was almost a year where I was really not doing much of anything, and trying some other things. And at some point, I just had to admit to myself that, well, you never really that committed to DNRS. And if, it's kind of some ways your last hope, because
Mhm.
so many other things. And I got to tell you, I've tried everything. And it's just like, this is it. You need to do this and do it, yeah, fully, and be fully committed to it. So, yeah, there was a gap there for a while, and yeah, then I came back to it.
Okay. Well, I think that's so helpful for people to hear because one of the things that I think tends to come up a lot of times when someone watches a testimonial is the person just is so excited that they're feeling well and they talk about just fully committing. And for so many of us, it is a stop and start, and it does take several tries.
Mhm.
So I think it's helpful to normalize that for people that, not everyone just dives right in and then never looks back and then practices every single day. For so many of us, there is a stop and a start. And that doesn't mean that you can't then commit and heal. So I
Yeah.
just thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I learned that in your classes. There were people that were sharing that, yeah, that they had fallen away,
Mhm.
and then symptoms were either not getting any better or coming back in some sense. And not to say you have to forever do the program, but during the process, yeah. So it was nice to know that other people had kind of fallen away and come back in, and no judgment about that. Just, welcome back, and get serious.
Yeah, absolutely. Zero judgment, zero judgment. So yeah, like I said, thank you for sharing that. I think that so many people will find that really helpful and just normalizing for them.
Yeah.
Um, One of the other things I wanted to ask you about is I know that you did some somatic work in addition to DNRS. How
Hmm.
did you find a way to kind of marry those two worlds that can be very different and sometimes at opposition with each other? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I would. It definitely helped, the somatic work, and I'm talking about somatic work through Peter Levine's work
Mhm.
and somatic experiencing, and Elizabeth Stanley's work, and out of her book, um, and focusing. It's a kind of like a type of somatic meditation, and
Mhm.
it was essential at some point, because I couldn't really even focus on the DNRS, that things were so dysregulated, that it was great to have a go-to that would calm me down enough in order to be able to do the DNRS. So I think it's a good blend. And the technical stuff about this, Connie, is bottom up and top down. And we're clear that DNRS is more of a top down type of program, somatic experience more of a bottom up. And I think both are indicated. Um, and they are at odds. I have to say that there's some of it. Somatic experience will have you fully focus on what's going on in your body. And that's kind of the last thing the DNRS wants you to focus on, just about anything else. So it's a balancing act, but definitely got a lot of benefit from doing somatic work, and still use those techniques. I do.
Sure. Sure. Well, how did you create that balance? Because I think that's one of the things that can get so, like you said, so confusing because one group of people is saying do this and another group of people is saying do the exact opposite. Was that something that you just played with or kind of figured that over time or just gave yourself permission that I'm not going to get this perfect and that's okay?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't need to get it just right. But initially it was hearing one paradigm, experts in that saying this is the way to go. And then this is another paradigm. Um, and there seemed to be a conflict in those two things. So I think I just sort of ultimately realized that DNRS was the long game. You know,
Mm,
it's a gradual rewiring, and that the somatic stuff can help in the moment a lot more.
gotcha.
That you have something to go to get your body calmed down, and so I think in that sense they're complementary.
Yeah.
They can work well together.
Yeah.
I would never say that, and I know somatic experiencing works for people completely, but it wouldn't be my recommendation with this sort of dysregulation that you can do it all through somatic experiencing. Yeah.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a really lovely explanation about kind of brain retraining and DNRS being more of a long game, and that the somatic work is more so something that you kind of do in the moment when you're just your system is so heightened and you're like, I need something because this is I feel so activated and so uncomfortable.
yeah, yeah. And there are all sorts of somatic practices from tapping to havening or
Mhm.
whatever it is, and things like that. But Peter Levine's program is pretty good for
Yeah.
learning some of those. But it depends on having a gifted practitioner of that. And not all of them are gifted, but some of them are very gifted. So
And that's what I was also just going to mention is I know you worked with a practitioner, which can make all the difference in the world because then you're not having to try and figure it out on your own. You've got someone that's trained that can really cue into your system and say, okay, we're going to pause. And you might not even know why you're pausing, but they can see that your system is starting to shift and either go into shutdown or into fight or flight. So
right,
I think
exactly.
that's a big piece of it too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, one other question I wanted to ask
Mhm.
is, so what would you share with people who are currently rewiring their brain and rewiring their nervous system? Anything that you would share or wish someone had shared with you when you were kind of in the thick of it?
I'd say make sure you have a coach. Um, you can do it without a coach, and um, but I think that's an essential piece. And I think the other piece is the classes, to have that community to do it within. Is that I think those things are essential. Um, I'm not sure that answers your question, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, those two things. Um, yeah, because the program is intensive, and it's you need to stay on track, and having those resources like a coach, like a group of support through these classes, um, is very important. Yeah, I'm not sure I could have done it without it. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that absolutely answers the question. Because we both know how isolating this is and how, like you said, when you need the support and the interaction the most, and your brain and nervous system is saying nope. And so having that support, either one on one or in group, or preferably both if possible, can really be a game changer and
Yeah.
can help keep you on track, help keep you inspired and motivated. And when that trust and faith that this is working is really low, it can boost that up as well. So, yeah,
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah,
it's essential. It made the difference for me. It really did. It
yeah.
really did.
Well, and actually, just one more question. So, we've talked a bit about social anxiety and things like that. So, what does life look like for you in that arena now? Because I don't know that we touched on that. Out doing things, seeing people.
Yeah, yeah, and going out places, just this last Friday, my wife and I were at a comedy club, and just with friends celebrating her birthday, and it was great, it was fun, and just like old times, but I couldn't have done that before.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that, because again, we both know, and probably anyone watching this video understands all of the sensory input that's coming at you when you're in a comedy club. And if you're dysregulated, that's not fun. But when you're regulated, it is.
Yeah, and that's a
Yeah.
long way to go from not being able to watch a TV show because it's too stimulating to
Right.
being in a crowd of people and watching a very fast-paced show like that. We've been out to several concerts, been out dancing, um, just doing what we enjoy doing and getting together with friends all the time. So the social thing is pretty much handled, I would say.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, because like I said, I didn't remember touching on that. And it's always helpful for people to hear, okay, this is where I started and this is where I'm at now, and just how much you can change. So
Well, absolutely. Yeah. And it changes still every day and things get easier and better. And yeah.
well, Larry, so good to reconnect with you. And thank you again for agreeing to do this. I know one of the things that you've talked about is wanting to create meaning in your experience and wanting to help others. And I know that our chat today will do both of those things, or at least will help others. Hopefully, it also creates meaning. Let me not speak for you.
Yeah. Yeah. You really get isolated out there and it's just great that there are people around that have been through it that know the path and know that you're going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, so good to talk with you today, Larry. Thank you so
good to talk
much.
to you.
All
Right. My
right.
pleasure.
Take care. Bye bye.
Right. Bye.